Hey guys, One Take Review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Vane FM album, The World Is Going to Ruin You. Before I get into this review, I believe it was yesterday or a couple days ago, some allegations were made against the band concerning some violence at a show, I believe. All I know about it is that it's not so horrible that it prevents me from talking about one of their albums and reviewing one of their albums. But I just want to say before this review begins, I have no personal bias in this. I actually went out of my way to not know too much about it, besides the fact that it wasn't something truly so horrible that I didn't want to even bring their name up in a video. All I know is that they did something that could potentially be pretty bad and, pretty not good, but it doesn't stop me from talking about the album. It's not that horrible. And I just wanted to say I don't take sides in those allegations. It doesn't affect this review whatsoever. I just wanted to say that because I know that if I don't, I'll probably get comments saying like blah 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 this, or you took this side, so this is why you said that, etc. Just wanted to get that out of the way. I have no bias about this. This is just genuinely what I think about the record, what I think about the band as musicians, not as people. I try to ignore constantly the people that make music as actual individuals because, well, let's face it, if we refuse to listen to musicians who are bad people, a solid probably three-quarters of the music industry would be out of jobs. So, yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. This has nothing to do with those allegations, and with that being said, let me get into the review. Now, This World Is Going to Ruin You is the sophomore album by Boston metalcore band Vane, who just changed their name to Vane FM 2 years ago, and in 2018 their debut Error Zone released, and to be honest, I didn't care much for that album, and I don't know why I thought I was going to care for this album, but I decided to give them a second chance anyway, and yeah, I still don't care for them at all. A major flaw of this album for me is vocalist Anthony DiDio. I think he is actually, I won't say an entirely weak component of the album, but he just kind of sounds like every metalcore vocalist with his shrieks and screams into the microphone. Normally, I don't really have any problem with this per se, unless it gets into obnoxious levels. See, bands like Jerome's Dream, who I know they're not technically a metalcore band, but I just feel the need to get my hatred for Jerome's Dream out there sometimes. But, anyways, with that being said, my main issue with Didio's voice comes in the form of his mixing, or the mixing of his vocals, I should say. There are times where his otherwise pretty powerful voice kind of just comes across as way too low in the mix. Songs like Welcome Home are actually really hurt by this fact, and Didio doesn't sound any better for the low mixing in the vocals. That just really kind of drags the album down for me. I mean, normally I try to not let that stuff get to me too much because I'm trying to appreciate what the artist is kind of conveying overall, even if it's kind of mixed or produced shoddily. But it just kind of makes an otherwise solid enough vocalist sound extremely weak. The instrumentals here are fine as well, even though they don't really add up to much, and I do think you could probably argue the fact that most songs on here don't even, or I shouldn't say don't even, but barely crack a minute. I do think that is something that you could argue a reason as to why the instrumentals don't really become much interesting, at least, but at the same time, I just don't think the band are that engaging at all, that even if they were making 3 to 10 minute long songs on this record, that they would just be equally as eh. They mostly managed to bring solid performances with tracks like Magazine Beach sounding fine enough, not great, but certainly not bad. There are a couple of weak instrumentals here though, like Inside Design, that feel simultaneously incomplete and underperformed, which is almost an impressive feat in and of itself. While they definitely aren't consistently poor performers, Vane FM don't really, bring much up here in terms of interesting performance. They could have brought a lot to the table that could have been original or interesting, but instead this just sounds like every other over-the-top aggressive hardcore album or I shouldn't say hardcore, but metalcore album that I've heard. Now, to give the band some musical credit, like I said before, most songs on here barely add up to a minute, but at the same time, they manage to develop their songs pretty well overall. I'm not saying songs like Lights Out or Hell Night are particularly great, in fact, they're pretty mediocre overall, but at the same time, I would be betraying any sense of objectivity if I said that they didn't develop themselves pretty well with such short runtimes. I'm not saying they managed to do a lot because they don't, but Still, for songs that are a minute and a half max for the most part, they go places, just not a lot of places, but still more places than most songs of that length manage to go to, generally speaking. With that being said, I do think that This World is Going to Ruin You sounds just ever so slightly unfinished. It's not a total train wreck of incomplete ideas or anything like that, but you've got songs like the more, at least slightly melodic Wavery, or tracks like Versus Wyoming that just sort of don't really go into the album the way they should. They feel like small pieces of a much larger whole that just simply does not exist throughout this record. This especially rings true for the song Funeral Sound, which closes out the album. It's 7 minutes long, and it's a pretty epic song overall. Not so much in its actual performance, but just the fact that it's 7 minutes, that's like 20 minutes by Vane FM standards. So the fact that it's on there, just kind of tacked on to the end, and doesn't really have any context to go with, it kind of makes it a weaker track. I mean, to have such a kind of epic length by the band's standards, close out an album of 1.5 minute songs on a pretty conceptually tame record as far as metalcore goes. It really makes no sense, and it does feel like the band were trying to achieve more here, and I don't know, maybe they had a deadline to fill for their label, or just simply got lazy, even though I'm hoping that's not the case. This record doesn't kind of flow properly, I guess you could say. While individual songs on here are capable of achieving a decent amount in their short run times, I just still feel like this album should have added up to more than it does. And I'm not saying they need to put out some sort of like hardcore concept album like, say, Husker Du Zen Arcade, which is a masterpiece, but I will talk about that another day. But at the same time, I think that the flow here is just kind of off. There are times where the band seem to be going in one kind of direction, and then they just go in a totally different direction, and nothing feels connected here for the most part. So overall, I didn't enjoy Vane FM's debut in 2018, and I don't know why I thought I'd enjoy this, because I really didn't. This band represents a fair amount of what I dislike about metalcore as a genre, and kind of, even to some extent, some modern alternative metal. And while they are obviously a talented band that appeals to many, they're reasonably popular, This World is Going to Ruin You. It just doesn't appeal to me at all, frankly. I'm going to give this album 2.5 stars. I was considering giving it a bit lower of a rating, but I do understand that there's a part of me that just simply does not like metalcore as a genre that affects my opinions on this, so 2.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I will see you guys in the next one.